It's a little bit weird. It's weirder to be Joe Rogan.
You think?
Yeah, it's got to be.
It's weird. It's weird to be any person in the public eye, but in this time, it's particularly weird. If you're like one of the only people, I mean, the media is so bizarrely compromised. It's so weird when you watch these narratives spin both on the left and on the right. And you're like, is anybody fucking rational? Is anybody looking at in this so few that a comedian like yourself just rises to the top of the heap?
Well, it's funny, dude, because since the last time I was on, this has been kind of like the knock on me in a way now.
Is that you're a comedian?
You're just a comedian.
You're
this
my
guy's not
emotional
an expert.
support comedian.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Have you ever been
It feels
emotional
weird.
support comedian?
It feels weird doing this without Doug, to be honest.
Aww.
It seems kind of wrong. But that's been like essentially that's like the knock is like, yeah, but you're acting like you're an expert, but you're just some comedian. And it's like, no, that's the point. That's always been the point. Like, yes, I'm just a comedian. I'm not an expert. And still, being not an expert, hand me your favorite Warhawk, and I will tear them to shreds, because it's actually not that hard. And, like, these people aren't really experts either.
Well, also the problem with that is these people that are talking about these things are talking about people not being experts while they're not experts.
Yeah.
There's, what does Doug have a degree in? English?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Sam Harris is a neuroscientist.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these different people who have, expertise in one area that is pretty much outside geopolitical, world politics and international relations and chaos and war and the military-industrial complex. And these are very, very complex, sophisticated, nuanced discussions that you have to have when you're talking about these things, because there's so many different factors at play. There's so much money. There's so much bullshit in terms of what's the truth? What's the narrative? Who's pushing the narrative? Who's being paid to push the narrative? Which is really weird. There's so many of these fucking online influencers that I don't even think are really human beings that have prominent accounts.
Yep. But then there's also, it's a convenient kind of way to dismiss somebody.
Of course, instead of addressing the facts.
Well, I thought was really funny to me was that, so a few days after the last time, after me and Douglas Murray debated on the show, he went on Bill Maher's show. And so it's after having this whole thing, the whole 45 minutes opening the show about how you comedians don't know what you're talking about. He says don't know what you're talking about while he's smearing two people who he's never heard of and doesn't even know what they do or whatever, but not the best way to make an appeal to expertise. But no, he doesn't have a problem with Bill Maher doing it because he agrees with him. So the issue isn't really being an expert versus being a comedian. Konstantin Kassin went on this whole thing about expertise and all of this, and it's he also started as a comedian. Why all of a sudden does this standard only apply to me and only when I'm talking about Israel? It never applied to me when I was talking about COVID. It never applied to me when they agreed with me on stuff. Right. They would just go, look, Dave, breaking it down. But now there's this one topic that one guy is not allowed to not be an expert on, and it happens to be this one topic that the entire population is turning on. I shouldn't say the entire, but
it's
huge numbers.
When someone attacks what you do professionally versus what you're actually saying.
Yeah.
Why not just dispute what he's saying instead of this appeal to authority?
Right.
You're not an expert.
But also, to ask that question is to answer that question.
Right, you can only ask me a few things in life that I can give you definitive answers on. And even then, I might have to refer to expert. If you want to ask me about judo, I've been doing jiu-jitsu since 90. I think I started in 97, somewhere around then. 96, maybe. I don't know shit about judo.
Right.
I know how to do a few hip tosses, but when someone is doing something, I don't even know what it's called. If I go haragoshi, I might get it wrong, because haragoshi might be legs on the outside versus leg on the inside. Wrestling, I gotta defer to DC. You know? So even in martial arts, I'm not totally an expert.
Yeah, and then there might be somebody who is like totally an expert, like say, a wrestler who went to the Olympics,
right,
and was like a total expert, or a coach or something like that, total expert in wrestling, and they could still get something about MMA completely off,
or jiu-jitsu.
Right, because
it happened
it's like,
in the last fight, in the last UFC card. Daniel Cormier didn't know about the dead orchard. So he thought this person was fine because they had two arms in while they're caught in a triangle. I go, no, this is a real submission. This is fucking dangerous. Like, there's this guy, Nathan Orchard, who figured out how to do a triangle with two arms in, and it's replicable. A lot of guys do it now. And I think it was a lady at the last UFC had it. And I was like, oh shit, and Daniel didn't know it yet. There's a couple other things, like the buggy choke. If you don't know about jiu-jitsu, and you see a guy who's on his back and he's getting smothered, but all of a sudden he reaches under with his leg, and I'm going, oh, and you don't know what's going on. Like, that's a fucking choke, like a really dangerous one. Ty Ruotolo gets you in that, you're Fucksville. You know, there's guys, so it's like, there's areas of expertise, even in areas that I'm an expert in, that I have to call on other people. Like, this is a stupid argument. Like, what are the facts? Does that submission work? Is that genocide? Right. Like, what is, what's going on? Were you funding Hamas? Is Hezbollah a proxy of Iran? Did Iran get the money to do this when Biden released the funds? Because who's allowed to be an expert on all these things? Yeah, and then of course there are things like do you support lockdowns? And like, in order to have, say, an expert opinion on this policy, it's like, okay, well, you'd be like, they'd say we're following the science. So in other words, they have an epidemiologist or something like that who's arguing lockdowns will cut down on the transmission of the virus. Forget they turned out to be wrong, but leaving that aside, you're like, okay, but are they also an economist? Are they also a specialist, a sociologist, a specialist in childhood development who would tell you what closing the schools? Oh, who's the person who has expertise in every single one of those fields? Doesn't exist. There isn't an expert in all of those fields. You know what I mean? That was the problem with that time, because that time everyone was so fearful. And the news was pushing fear. And it was clearly a narrative. I forget who it was, but some health official was being interviewed recently, and he said that during 2020 that Anthony Fauci said to him, the problem is Americans aren't scared enough, which is crazy to say. It's a wild thing to say, that your goal is to make people more fearful. So you're trying to put out a narrative that makes people more fearful, which, by the way, fucks with your immune system in a gigantic way. Not good at all to be scared. I don't know how many people got really, really, really sick from COVID because when they got it, they freaked the fuck out and they couldn't sleep and they thought they were going to die and they were riddled with anxiety, and that makes you attack people around you, and then you look for a solution. And when these trusted institutions, which up until 5 fucking years ago, I was 100% on board with everything, with vaccines, with every medical innovation other than psychiatric medications, which I think are pretty much overprescribed. All of a sudden, everyone's like hoping these people have the answer. So anybody who's like, but there's this guy Jay Bhattacharya, he's also an expert. No, fuck you, fuck you. It's like an anti-science, trust the science, COVID denier, vaccine denier. It just became this fearful because everybody just responded to the fucking media, because everybody's too tuned in to all of this negative shit, man, all day long. Well, you have to scare people. If you want to implement like a tyrannical policy, you almost always have to scare people. Always. I mean, that's the only way. Now everyone knows, right? Like you just said, like being terrified is not good for your health. That on a human level, we also all know that it's not good for good decision making, but it is excellent for, I will turn my brain off and give the authority to you to go do. I mean, look, it was right after 9/11. If people forget about this, but like the level to which Dick Cheney and George W. Bush used to fearmonger. Dick Cheney, the vice president of the United States of America, who is a bit more than just your average vice president, he said, it's not a matter of if, but when there will be another 9/11 attack. They were trying to tell the American people right after 9/11 to be in a constant state of fear. Do you remember the COVID warnings where they had colors? Or excuse me, the terror warning where they had colors.
The threat level or whatever.
Colors.
Yeah. And then one day they'd be like, it's up to yellow.
Yeah.
And everyone, and I mean, we were really still traumatized from 9/11. But the thing about it is that they knew what they wanted to do. They knew the policy they wanted to start embarking on, and it was the mix of they hate us, the big lie, which was they hate us for our freedom. Which was like really the big lie after 9/11 was like, because the American people very organically wanted to know what the beef was. Like 9/11 happened, everybody was like, yo, why do they hate us?
Right.
What's this beef about? And their answer was they hate you for your freedom. And by the way, this is going to happen again. So be terrified. Second off, understand that they're so irrational that their beef with you is that like your grandma can go to the grocery store. So what do you do with that other than say, what the American people said, which is George W. Bush, you have a blank check to go attack whoever you want to, and we'll support you.
Yeah, I remember feeling that way. Right? I remember feeling it's up to these fucking guys, these hard-nosed generals and military leaders these are the guys that are going to protect us now. We got to put all our faith in them. This shit is real, and it's going on. But I had no idea. So 2001, I wasn't that much of a conspiracy theorist. I was into UFOs.